Hotel family, this is Brother Malik, and welcome again to Blog Talk Radio. We have another interesting show for you this evening. We have the Brother Atun Re who will be addressing the nation again. And as I mentioned yesterday, the brother pretty much tied up his journey to becoming who he is, which is Atun Re and also Rashua L. And this evening he should be going a little bit more into detail as far as Dr. Malachi Z. York's case and his eventual release from incarceration. And the brother will also be taking some questions in regards to that. So it's going to be a pretty interesting evening. Let me get the brother on the line. Brother Atun Re, how you doing, brother? Welcome to Blog Talk Radio.
Thank you. How are you doing tonight, Malik?
I'm doing great, brother. I'm doing great.
That's a blessing.
Great. I was just telling the listening audience that we have a very interesting show this evening. We are looking to do a two-part show. The first part of the show will deal with Dr. Malachi Z. York's case and the type of support needed to carry out this project. We will go into specifics, and then we will take some questions from the listening audience pertaining to the topic at hand. And hopefully the audience will try to keep their questions pretty much in line pertaining to that topic. And then for the second part of the show, we will touch briefly on OSOI. I know that earlier you had given a definition of, not a definition, but you pretty much let everyone know what OSOI stood for. But still, a few may have questions in regard to OSOI and how does it relate to the Nawapian Nation. So I figured that may be interesting, into the program even to sort of touch on that. Okay? How does that sound?
That sounds great. That's fine.
Okay, great. So let's kick off the first part. And, I have a question. That's how I figure we can start it off in regards to Dr. Malachi Z. York's case. And basically just trying to find out how your case pretty much, how it ties into Doc's case, like to show the relationship. This way the family and the listening audience could try to get some understanding about how the two cases sort of intertwine and go together.
Well, it starts in terms of if we all were to remember back right before May 8th of 2002, Baba did a series of videotapes that dealt with Revelations chapter 17 and 18. And in it, he spoke explicitly about the word porne, which got translated into English to mean fornication. It is the word that produced pornography. And keep in mind, Baba himself was, charged with child molestation. Very, very serious offense because, in the penitentiary, those types of charges are called skin charges and, are not looked upon by the inmates you can come to be housed with very kindly. Most people die in the penitentiary with those type charges, and that's true. And people who put Baba there are totally aware of that. And, there's a two-part reason by which those types of charges were given to him and or applied. One, because they want to see him die within prison, and because the primary objective is not just to shut him away, but to kill him and see to it that his truth and or a truth like the one he presented is never again told. And the other reason is because it is those beings who orchestrated this, who are guilty of the very same thing that they charged him with. And the reality of it all is that, they, I would imagine, would have been in a state by which they hope, with high hopes, that anyone who raises in their ranks to a particular state and or status by which they can be considered as truly one of them, that whomever this being may be would participate in their stupidity, ultimately seeing that they had a different situation where Baba himself was concerned right away. That then became a problem that they saw would manifest, on down the line, and, set aside from the fact that they, in every way, couldn't stand the fact that Baba was raising minds. So, again, this is why and how he got charged with child molestation. In other words, how would you say, coincidence that pornography is as equally part of the same whole when you talk in terms of, just the absurdness of it all. When you talk like really what goes on in a person's bedroom could never be viewed by another. If indeed the act is taking place, it should be within the framework of creating or procreating oneself, in concert with the divine thing called love. So said the keepers of the law of one way back in what you all referred to as the land of Nod and or Atlantis. You see, because when you say the keepers of the law of one in the land of Nod, we all know that the land of Nod meant nude, and it is there that etheric beings were becoming accustomed to the physical experience. They taste food and said, ooh, this is tasty. They felt hot, they felt cold, and were able to distinguish that indeed what was most comfortable was merely warm. And then they reached the ceiling of the experience, which is the sexual relation between beings who were, making themselves available. And a lot of things went on. There were those who had absolutely no sexual ethic, becoming known, like I said before, as Romulans, those who would roam the land, creating chaos and confusion, didn't care the way that deformities in nature was being produced by virtue of participation within what was called the freak sessions and or orgies that were, plentiful. While we who became vocal about it all, being the Vulcan, were those who were referred to as the keepers of the law of one, and while they were referred to as the sons of Belial. And this gene, be it one or the other, was passed down from mother to daughter, father to son, and exists right here today all over the planet in we who are those people of color. And it is not a freak of nature and or a freak session that one should be and or be involved in while participating in the act, for is nature moving at its finest, if indeed everybody remembers that. And so you have many who are in positions today of great power and or influence in our society, families with names like Rothschild and Rockefeller, Bill Gates, and the list goes on, who enjoy the type of lifestyles that many of us as people of color may never come to see. Because, really, even people like Michael Jackson, who you might think, is quite wealthy, that money pales in comparison. The Michael Jackson money to the Rockefeller or, the Rothschild. And, little do we see and or know just how, expensive those types of money that you see in places like Napa Valley, old money, wine country money, Christian brother money, the type of castles that, have the checkerboard floors that many of you don't know nothing about, extremely Masonic in every way. And keep in mind, Atun Re in this life became 33-degree Freemason of the highest order, having a sponsor and having taken an oath of secrecy. And in every way, he knew the whole time what he was talking about. And to them had the nerve to then begin to tell us. Well, as a result, everybody knows what happened. And right here today, you have a particular type of situation by which you have currencies that, you fold a particular way and you can see the 9/11 incident right there in your face. These currencies were created long before the actual incident. So that lets you know that somewhere in all this, they have a means to do what? To see into the future. And that's exactly what they've been doing, seeing into the future, targeting significant reincarnate, and seeing to it that in every way, most of these beings are stopped before they become like one of us. Well, in my situation, it is no different. I've been through several penitentiaries, like I said, both state and federal, having won my freedom by the mercy of the Most High. In no way did any of that come easy. You're talking about many, many hours of prayer. And I'm not ashamed to tell you, prayer is divine. Why? Because it is communication, a transmitted signal that is received. How do you know? Because if you take the time to do it, it works. And many might say, well, I pray and my prayers weren't answered. And I say, yeah, they was. And they say, no, it wasn't. And I say, yeah, it was. And they say, how did you say that? Well, you was just told no, and you couldn't accept it. Because not everything and every time you pray is what you ask for granted. We are only concerned with predominantly your needs being met. And I've asked many times before, is there anyone that you may know that has ever been without the things they need? And many, while my having asked that question, would be quick to say, yes, I've been without what I need. And I say, no, you haven't. And they'll say, yes, I have. What do you mean? Well, you tell me, when were you without what you need? Well, I didn't have any food. Well, it could be you needed to fast. And because you wouldn't, what we as your elders did is extract, to take the food out of your universe long enough for the fast to take place and then be implemented. And then others will say, well, I didn't have anywhere to go. Well, it could be when you had somewhere to go, you didn't appreciate it, and you abused it. And on that note, you needed to have some things reinstilled that could only be done through a state of discomfort. So it was applied and then, restored, meaning your place to stay. Because the reality of it is, if indeed there was ever a time that you all were in a state by which you did not have the things you need, you would be dead at that moment. And you have many of you that say, well, wait a minute, man, I'm broke. I say, no. If you're broke, that means you need to be fixed. And it seems to me you're working just fine. You're living and breathing, your fingers, your arms. Be thankful. Count your blessings. But up and above that, make your blessings count. We have a situation by which Baba was accused for having what they say revealed secrets, accused of the very sickness that they who are so extremely wealthy are sick with. Because many of these beings, normal life to them had become boring a long time ago. And what do? Well, let me tell you, they participate in child molestation orgies at a very, very high price to attend. How do I know? Well, I personally, alchemically, while sitting in a ordinary household mirror, was able to enter into their forums and watch. And I was shocked to see, what was really going on. And we're talking about attorneys, doctors, lawyers, judges, chiefs of police, and it's crazy. These things are taking place in a lot of you all's neighborhoods that you all don't even know, in places that you would least suspect. And again, they have a mode of punishment because Baba's not the only one. Like I told you, the Native American Indian master, who is my uncle, who I refer to as Uncle BB, he served 20 years in the penitentiary. Not a child molestation charge, but he was charged with having murdered someone. But what had happened was he had come to know how to get into very, very high price safe, and he had been hired to do one, and he had put a particular type of charge on the thing and had a night watchman, and the night watchman came through right as the thing blew up, and the rivet from its encasing went into the man's head. And Uncle BB said he could have left right there and left the man for dead, but he chose to do what he could to help him. Took his shirt off and wrapped it around the man's head and put the man's head in his lap, called for the ambulance and began to cry. And they first gave him life without possibility of parole and put him on death row in San Quentin, mistakenly, because someone else had his exact same name and his number was only off by one number. And he sat on death row for 5 years, extremely frightened. And eventually they found out and they took him, put him back in general population. And eventually he ended up at Avenal State Prison where him and I paths crossed. And the day he gets out after serving 20 years, he's getting ready to go home. That's what they charged him with. That's right, child molestation, a crime that he did not commit. Sound familiar? And he got a fresh new 20 years the day he was getting ready to come home. And he's still in there right now in a place called Delano Prison. Now, this, if in any way you all may think is coincidental, it's not, because that Native American master is Baba's brother. And they know exactly who he is, just like they know exactly who I am, just like they know exactly who Baba is. How do I know that all of this is so? Well, let me tell you this. I wrote one letter to Baba a week for 36 weeks while in Avenal, and he never once responded. And I went to Uncle BB and I said, man, what is it? He said, Daddy don't love me? He said, no, that's not it. I said, well, I've written over and over and gotten absolutely no response. He said, no. He said, what it is, your father is protecting you. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, let me just put it to you this way. Sometimes dogs can sniff a trail where they need not know to be. And if indeed he was to communicate with you, it could very well be that you never make it home and you be assassinated right here. And he then went on to say, your father will communicate with you in other ways that you have yet to become accustomed to. And so there's no why. Well, every word he said has come to pass and is indeed true. And what was really shocking is when I got home. Well, a week before I got home, I had ordered some music from what they call special purchase. In the penitentiary, it's very hard to get appliances and or cassettes and or CDs or television, anything of that nature. At one time, your family could send these things in. But now you have to order from a particular type of catalog that is ran by the police. They keep all the money that is circulating in the penitentiary right within their framework. And, again, you used to could buy from outside catalogs. You can't even do that now. You buy from Walking House, which is owned by the police, and one other one, again, owned by the police. And if I'm not mistaken, it's the exact same way it's said these days anyway. And I went to pick up some music, and when your purchase comes through, you got to go to a place called R&R, which is the place that the prisoners come in and the place that the prisoners go out, exact same place. And I got there, and for lack of a better way to put it, they put me into a bullpen that was quite crowded, and there was a being that was standing there talking about, in New York we do it like this and that and this time of year. And I'm like, yo, bud, you from New York? He's like, yeah. I'm like, where from? He said, Harlem, and I'm from Harlem. I said, what you mean? He said, I live on 118th and Lenox Avenue. I said, oh, really? You know so-and-so and so-and-so? Yeah, I know so-and-so. And the being knew many people that I knew, but I had never seen him before. I said, well, what are you into? He said, music. How coincidental, because, I'm into music as well. And next thing I know, the police said, I want everybody in there to be quiet. And we all quieted down, but the brother and I, quite naturally, we tried to continue to communicate soft-spokenly. And next thing I know, the officer says, hey, you. And I said, who, me? And he's like, yeah, you. Go back to the unit. And I was sent back to the unit. Never was able to get my CDs, and I had 2 weeks before I was destined to go home. And when I came home, that same being that was in the bullpen lived right next door to me and Lakeisha Lewis. In fact, he lived inside the old Masonic Lodge, which is 707 Marin Street. See, because two of the millionaires that helped do Baba, his name is Fred Brandenfield and Martin Brandenfield, and they own a very, very large piece of property in downtown Vallejo, California. They own a half a city block, 6,000 square foot, what used to be Bank, 648 Virginia. Then they own 707 Marin, which is the old Masonic Lodge, and 709, 711, and 713, which is the 2,600 square foot loft that Lakeisha and I resided in, and then 715. And up under these buildings, there are tunnels that run from as far north as Sacramento and as far south as San Francisco, which is quite a distance in both directions. And let me tell you something, there were secret passageways because all that property was built by what would be considered master builders. And those tunnels were brought to my attention by a young lady who was working there when Lakeisha and I first got the place. And she told us how, as children, they would play down there and how they had boarded them up, etc. And there's something down there, y'all, that belongs to us. And I'm going to explain. Well, the entire community of Egyptologists are looking for something in the sands of ancient Tamaray right now as we speak. What they're looking for is the sarcophagus of Imhotep and Anubis, to which they will never find. And the reason being is because, again, Baba wrote a book called Let's Set the Record Straight. And in it he says to you all that we walked across the Bering Strait having taken on Oriental wives. Many of us settled in what is now considered to be Alaska, being known today as Eskimos. Others of us continued to walk on down, settled, becoming known as Native American Indians. And others walked further still on into a place that is now being called Mexico, where you have your Mayans and, the Incas and their pyramids. And then he went on to say that we did this for, to play a sport, and or that we were on a vacation. And the sport, if I'm not mistaken, was somewhat like lacrosse. And no one in the nation ever took the time to say, wait a minute, why would we walk all the way over there just to play a sport? That don't make sense. Well, he said vacation, and the root word of vacation is to vacate. Yeah, and we did vacate something. And what it was we vacated is, listen, the sarcophagus of Anubis and Imhotep. Why? Because in this day and time, we would need a gold supply to produce our monoatomic. And that gold supply is there right now. And let me tell you, they know it's there, and they tried to move it, but it sits on top of the largest vortexes in the entire Western Hemisphere. If they move the sarcophagus, there's a frequency that will cause the San Andreas to roll. Now, again, don't believe me, because we can check it out, meaning, go down up in there, and y'all can see it for yourself. How do I know? Well, me and a brother who lived with me and Lakeisha, his name is David Riley, who was referred to affectionately by us as Day Day. We tried to get it out, and what was released into the air was an odor that smelled a lot like sulfur, and the ground didn't move, erratically, but it was starting to move very slowly. And the next thing I know, the entire city of Vallejo was in the building. The fire department, chief of police, city planner's office, and they do that anytime somebody tries to go down there and mess with those artifacts. And they're there, y'all. And they don't intend to allow us to ever put our hands on it. Trust me. And it's gotten booby-trapped and all types of crap. And it's right up underneath that building. Now, not only that, but in downtown Vallejo, you have what for a long time appeared to be a ghost town, meaning you had many, many different storefronts down there, and no one chose to become merchants. Why? Because there's things going on in that city that connect directly to them on a place called Mayor Island that you all know absolutely nothing about, and ties directly in to Lakeisha Lewis and Shababa. And because Lakeisha Lewis was married to me, right, and participated in pornography after having introduced herself to me as a college graduate, having earned her degree in what is called dental hygienic. And for 5 years, we stayed married, and I had absolutely no clue that any of that in reference to her could ever be true. In fact, I was extremely shocked, because you're talking about one of the most profound acting situations I have ever in my entire existence come in contact with, because in no way could anybody have told me that this sister had anything to do with anything like that at all. In fact, when I found out, I was living with a brother who is an Asian brother, a very good friend of mine, and this is after she had set me up. And it's sort of hard to explain. I was on parole and had to report, and I was told that if I gave him 13 months without problems, I would be able to discharge. Well, after 13 months, they then gave me yet another year for no apparent reason, saying that because of the nature of my crime, which again was illegal. Why? Because if you take the guilty plea, the law states that whatever the consequences are, you must have full knowledge of that, or your plea is not valid, meaning it's not educatedly and knowingly rendered. So at no time was I ever told that before they took my guilty plea. So technically, the guilty plea wasn't properly rendered. Now, I argued that. They didn't pay it any mind. I even filed paperwork that went all the way to Sacramento that didn't work at all. Because this is how far and how, deep, dug in deep they are. Well, either way, what happened was, her and I, having acquired this piece of property, I was doing promotional work and had gotten a contract with a guy named Tommy Woods out of Seattle, Washington for $150,000 to do radio promotion. We was going to do it region by region, $50,000 a pop. And I would do the West Coast region, Midwest region, and the South. Radio promotion is done by virtue of one must have existing relationships with program directors at certain what you call P1 radio stations. Now, I don't know if you all know what P1 radio stations are, but P1 radio stations are the top, 100 R&B, rap and neo-soul stations across America. And I have several existing relationships with different program directors at certain ones of them. And the thing is, when you get one friend that, he's cool and, he takes some money, because that's what they do, to get certain records played, it's worked into the budget. And they don't want to get caught because it's illegal, you see? But they do it all the time. And everybody in the record industry knows this. Now, well, his name starts to get around. Well, he's cool. Yo, Doug, you can work with him. He's all right. And I got some money, and because I'm legally inclined, she had a workman comp case that needed to be settled, and I settled that. And we got this loft and wanted to open up a bookstore / computer cafe, having within the framework of the lease a clause that gave us the legal right to sublet any portion. So that's what I did after, Ray Shell on the land, after having, been told that I would receive $5,000 worth of books. Then, I get a call and they tell me they're reneging, that they're not interested in opening a bookstore in this part of the country, which, for lack of a better way to put it, I thought was extremely whack. The reason being is because you got a lot of Nubians out here who never even heard of pop, don't even know who Dr. Malachi Z. York is. And I don't care what nobody say, it's a hurting thing to look down into the eyes of a being who is hungry for divine information and not even have a book to give them and or a class to send them to them, that they can be blessed like me and you to come in contact with what we know is very true, every bit of what they need, having been rendered by Baba, not just to us, but to the entire world, Nubian world, that is, because, again, it was initially called the Nubian Islamic Hebrew Mission, you see? So that hurt, and as a result, we had all these space, showcases, bookshelves that remained empty, and we was in hopes to facilitate the entire Bay Area as far north as Sacramento and as far south as San Jose, because there was only one other Nuwapian situation, which was in LA, which was being very poorly, ran from what we were told, go out, because you couldn't even reach these people, man. You get on the phone, you try and call them, just to connect. You know what? We got some family down there. Let's see what's happening with the brother. Call down, and man, it was like you could never reach no one.